a notification.
You should see a notification at the top when it starts recording.
Alrighty. All right, everyone, welcome to our second meeting for the Bridge program. For those of you that might not know what the Bridge program is, it's a new program that we're starting here at ASCE for our younger members, specifically EITs and recent graduates, to help bridge or guide them through the professional career. So last month we hosted a program over the PE exam, which was a great success. And today we're going to have a presentation covering the basics of negotiation by Mark Van Andel. Mark graduated from the University of Nebraska with a bachelor's in civil engineering and also obtained his MBA from SMU. He has 17 years of experience in transportation engineering, and 2 years ago, he moved to a role in finance. And he's currently in the Financial Planning and Analysis Group at Jacobs and the lead for Environmental, Social, and Governance, or ESG, for finance. So with that, we'll pass it on to Mark and his presentation over the basics of negotiation.
All right. Thanks, Samantha. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get this going. And I guess if there's questions during it, it looks like I won't be able to see the hand raising, so someone just either unmute and pipe in, or Samantha or someone let me know. So anyways, yeah, negotiation basics. So why are we talking about this? I know you have the salary survey coming up, so that's probably what's foremost in people's minds. But it's also, it's just a core skill if you want to progress in your career, leadership, management. You think of contract negotiations, those kind of things you'll have to do down the road. But one of the other things is most people are just not very good at negotiating. So it's something that you need to talk about. It's something you need to practice and sharpen your skills. You're not going to be able to avoid it in life. And this statistic really stands out to me. This comes from a class that I took on negotiations, but this statistic stood out to me. The 7.6% difference in salaries between male and female MBA graduates. And you think of MBA graduates, they've taken negotiation classes, or they're in theory or business savvy. But you'll see the statistic: only 7% of the women, but 57% of the men negotiated on salary. And for those that did negotiate, they saw the results. They saw a higher starting salary than those that didn't. And again, tied to the salaries here, recruiters are willing to negotiate compensation. Not always. Sometimes their hands are tied, but it is something that you can talk about. And it's not always salary. It's benefits. It's PTO. Those kind of things. So that's the why. And I want to start with some basic negotiation terms. And I think just about anything you look up on negotiation uses these terms. So there's the BATNA, or the best alternative to the negotiated agreement, which short story, it's your backup plan. So if you can't negotiate an agreement on something, then what's your fallback? The reservation price, that's your walkaway price. So if you're selling something, you're not going to sell it for less than this. And if you're buying something, you're not going to buy it for more than that. And then there's the ZOPA, which is the zone of potential agreement. So you think about that's where you negotiate. That's the middle range. So I won't sell something for less than 10,000, and you don't want to buy it for more than 20,000. We have from 10 to 20,000 is where we can do our negotiations. Okay, so there's essentially there's two types of negotiations. I think a distributive negotiation is what most people will think of when they think of a negotiation. You and I, so the example there is buying a car. We're talking about one piece. We're talking about the price, and we're coming to an agreement somewhere in the middle of where we're sitting. So we're splitting up the value there. That ZOPA. And with these type of negotiations, you probably only one of you is going to feel like you won, and you actually might both feel like you lost because you didn't get exactly what you wanted. No one's probably going to win these. And it's about what you have, not what the other party thinks you have. So, you're keeping things close to yourself. It's a more combative negotiation usually, as you're trying to win. The other type of negotiations are integrative negotiations. And so instead of just negotiating on one thing and trying to win, you're trying to find results that are good for both parties. So the win-win. A big part of that is you need to understand what the other side is looking for. So there's a couple pieces there. I have the example down there of a contract negotiation. So if you've great job, you submitted your RFP, you won the project, now you have to negotiate the contract. You're going to negotiate on several pieces there. There's the rate. You're going to have to negotiate an EIT rate, a PE rate, a project manager rate, an environmental scientist rate. There's a schedule to negotiate. Can we get this done in 6 months? Can we get this done in 12 months? Is it going to take us 10,000 hours? And what's the actual scope of the work? So it gives you a lot more to negotiate and try to find a solution that's going to be a win-win. So you think about just rates alone, say you need to have $50 an hour for EIT, but they're offering you 40. But on the PM side, they're offering you 150, but you only needed 100. You might, take the lower price on the EIT because you're getting the better price on the PM, and you both are happy with that. Looking at scope, especially on contracts, the client might want 5 Cadillac alternatives, and you can't do that within their budget. So you're sitting and you're agreeing that, do you want 5 Fords or do you want 3 Cadillacs? And you're bringing innovation, different possibilities that they haven't thought of, trying to create value for everybody. I mean, that's the goal in these integrative negotiations, is creating value for everyone rather than just fighting over, one solution. Another big part about negotiations is the prep. So you need to sit, and before you go into a negotiation, you need to think about yourself and what you think about the negotiation. So there's a couple things, almost like a checklist, that you need to perform to really be prepared. So number one, it seems simple, but what is your goal? If your goal is, on the contract negotiation, your goal is to make X dollars, that's something. If you just looking for experience, I mean, it depends on what your goal is. So you need to understand what your goals are, and that could be different things. So again, what are the issues? So to meet your goal, for the example here with the price, services, the schedule. And then the other thing you can do, and however you see fit to do this, some people actually do a scoring system where you can prioritize it. You can say price is number 1 for me, the services are number 2 for me, 3, and you can weight them and actually try to do some sort of analysis and try to figure out how you want to approach the negotiation. And then another important one, what's your BATNA? Because you need that backup plan, because as hard as you'll try to reach an agreement, it doesn't always happen. When you look back to, or going back to the salary side, you've got a new job and they're offering less than you can do, what's your backup plan? Do you have another offer? Are you staying at your current role? And then what's your reservation price? And I think this ties into a lot of them. You just need to know, you have your BATNA, but when are you going to walk away? So let's see, on to the next. The other piece of it is understanding the other side. So you understand your issues, you just understand what's important to you, but to really do well in a negotiation and not walk in blind, you need to understand the other side, understand what's important to them. What are their priorities? Is, go back to the contracts, is the fee number 1? Then you need to find a way to make that happen and try to negotiate on other pieces. Is the scope number 1? Those kind of things. The more you understand about the other side, the more likely you'll be able to find those agreements and create that value. As much as you have a BATNA, they have a BATNA. So when are they going to walk away? Because if you come in with numbers that are just way out of range, they're not going to negotiate with you. Potentially, they're going to walk away. It's a waste of their time. So it's important to understand. Same thing with their reservation price. Oh, sorry, BATNA was actually what's their backup plan. Sorry, not the price. But if they walk away from you, do they have someone else in line? So then, once you've done your analysis, you've kind of hopefully figured out that ZOPA, that middle range between you and them, what you can negotiate on. And this, don't be anchored by your resistance point. That's, if you ever look at and study bias, there's different biases that we have, and one of them is you can get anchored to $1. So if you think this is what I want, or this is what I have, and you're stuck on that number instead of listening and hearing things, you can get stuck and end up leaving money on the table. So, just because they offered you what you want doesn't mean you couldn't get more. So, and then some more prep about the situation. If you're in a negotiation, there could be potential deadlines. This contract needs to be negotiated by the end of the month. Maybe there's no rush, so that could change the conversation. If they're in a rush, you might be able to get a better deal for yourself. If they have lots of flexibility, it's not a big deal to them. Maybe then it doesn't need to be as big a deal for you as well, and you can focus your priorities somewhere else. And then, what standards do you use to assess fairness? It's really just sitting and thinking about what the negotiation means to both you and them, and trying to understand their side again. And it's the more you understand about them, the more you understand about yourself, that you can try to find these integrated solutions that will create a win-win for everyone. And the other one, and it's not fun, I think about this is very similar to like interview prep. So, when you're going for your first interview, you have to be prepared. Someone's going to ask you, what's your biggest weakness and what are you doing about it? You might have weaknesses in a negotiation. Maybe you're negotiating with the client and the last project didn't go so well. They might ask you, hey, the last project didn't go so well. Why should we pay you more? You need to be prepared for those things. You need to be honest. If you lie during a negotiation or withhold some truths, it could break a relationship. It could break the negotiation, and it's just not great for building relationships and trust. So, and again, this is then building on the relationship piece of things. There's something to think about. So if I'm going to buy a car, I might not be as friendly with the person because I just want the price I want. I'm never going to see the person again, and I don't care if he likes me or not. I just need to buy my car and get out. If I'm trying to negotiate salary with my boss, I'm probably not going to want to be as aggressive with him because I'm going to have to face him the next day. So you don't want to disrupt that relationship. You want to keep that relationship. So how you approach the negotiation is going to be very different if you expect an ongoing business relationship. Same thing with clients. You want to win more work with them, keeping them happy so the next project, the next contract goes better is important. But again, one-off contract, you might approach it a little different. And then the trust, I did just say being honest and truthful is important, but it doesn't mean everyone is going to be honest and truthful. And you need to understand that about someone. Is this someone you can trust? Are they going to feed you some misinformation to try to gain an advantage against you? If you know they have that reputation, prepare for it. Just different things to think about. So the party styles and tactics, I'll cover this a little bit more on the next slide. But, if you are going in against a very aggressive person, it's better to know that in advance and try to think about how you counter that aggressiveness. Or if you know that they're a very direct person, they're going to walk in, this is the offer, take it or leave it. Be prepared for that. Have your prep ready so you know that if you could take it or leave it, or think of ways to counteract that. The good cop, bad cop, just understanding the people, understanding relationships, and then taking the second bite at the apple. That's the person that they reach a deal and then they say, oh, well, wait, what about this? And if again, the more you're prepared, the better you can handle these situations. Another one there, yeah. So the limits to a person's authority. You wouldn't want to go into a salary conversation with your boss and negotiate salary, come to something that you agree to, and then you find out your boss doesn't have the authority to actually do the salary. Maybe it's their supervisor or someone in HR. Understanding those things beforehand will help you so you don't have to waste time or end up in a situation where you've put someone where they shouldn't be. And then just the last piece of prep, maybe not so much for salary negotiation, but for a larger contract negotiation, those kind of things that you want to think about. It's better to get some agreement ahead. So where are we going to meet? What's the agenda? These are the points we're going to discuss. Just any prep to make it smoother, so everyone walks in knowing the situation. And then this one, so the negotiation styles, and I have it at the bottom, but I think it's really worth highlighting first, is that the only way you're going to find your negotiation style is to practice, and everyone's different. And you just, I can't reiterate how much you have to practice. Like the slide at the beginning, people are not very good at this, and the only way you get better is to practice. So the conflict styles up there. So I like the animals, but there's the words there, the graph for you to look as well. But so there's the turtle, the kind of, I don't want to vote, I don't want to negotiate, I don't want to be here, let's just get this over with, or I'm not even going to try, and we both lose because I'm not going to negotiate. There's the teddy bear, the people pleaser who's just going to give in and do whatever you want. There's the shark who's just kind of, I'm going to win and you're not, and I'm just going to get in there and take what I want and leave. The compromise, the fox, the meet in the middle type of person. And then there's the owl, the collaborate, where we both win, and that's more the integrative negotiations where you're trying to find a solution where everyone can win. And then similar to those, there's these two terms that I also like. The high power, it's the high energy, walk in, take it or leave it type of person. And then there's the lower power, where it's more the sit back and try to understand the situation, adapt to it, respond, those kind of things. So again, when I took this class on negotiations, I think the best part of it was we got to do practice negotiations with each other, and you got to try out your style. Can't really do that with the teams virtual right now, but if you have a friend that you'd want to practice or anything, I mean, it's just great as a skill to learn, to find out who you are and how you negotiate. So for example, in one negotiation that I had to do, I was given direction that I was supposed to be the jerk, basically the shark, the high power person. Totally not my personality style. And I was negotiating against someone I'd never met before, and she thought I was a complete jerk. She didn't want to talk to me. And then it was funny because afterwards I'd explain I was supposed to be a jerk, and she understood. But if I had never had that opportunity to try that, I just wouldn't know. So the practice and the ability to find your voice, I think is really important when you can get those chances to do it. And here's a couple things that you can do for practice. So if you think about upcoming purchases, I've used the car because it's such an easy one to talk about. A car, other house, other big purchases. We're not traveling these much these days, but you can negotiate with a hotel for a better room, those kind of things. And I have the other, significant other, family. You think about where are we going to get together for Christmas? Hopefully we can get together for Christmas. Talking about your family, that's a negotiation. It's these small things that we do in life, negotiating with friends. Do you want to meet up for lunch, and negotiating about where are we going to meet? It's these small things that we don't think about them because we do them all the time, but just keep them in your mind. On the professional side, I have the salary negotiations, which is probably in people's minds, but project roles and tasks. So if you think about someone who's an upcoming engineer, you have professional goals, things you want to achieve. So your supervisor might not know that you want to get a certain type of experience on projects. Satisfaction at your job isn't just your salary; it's doing work you like. It's growing and learning, or other non-financial goals that you might have. So if you have those goals, definitely something to think about. And then client negotiations as you get further on in your career and think about winning projects and negotiating those contracts. And that's what I have. So if there's questions, I'm happy to answer them or try to answer them.
Yeah, I think we have a question in the group, in the chat. It says, would you negotiate if it's your first job and you have no other jobs on the table? I think that kind of relates to a question I also had, if I can add to it. I know when you're beginning your career, you're just grateful to have the job. So a lot of times you don't want to negotiate. So what would your advice be for someone maybe starting a new job, or they're early on in their career? And
yeah, I mean, so my advice would be to ask. This is career advice. It took me a hard time to learn. I got my first job. I was like, oh, thank goodness. I came out when it was a down market. It was right after 9/11. And I was so happy I got a job, I took it. But no, I think it's important to ask because, and it's not just the salary. Maybe you're in that role and there's things you not like. What I've found is you get 0% of the things you don't ask for. If you don't say anything, you're not going to get it, and you're just going to sit and be frustrated and angry. And if you do ask, and as long as it's not a combative request, or if you're making 60,000 and you go in and ask for 100,000, that's going to cause problems. But generally, no. My recommendation is as long as you're not unreasonable, I would ask for sure. The worst they say is no.
Yeah. I guess that was part of another question I had was, does it ever look bad when you're negotiating? You ask for a few more thousand. Does that look bad because it's only a few thousand and you're really fussing over that, or at times it can get.
I mean, it can, yeah. If it's all relative, if you're on $1 million contract and you're negotiating over the last couple thousand, yeah. But it depends on where you're at. If you're in the early negotiation, pick your battles. If you're, the ultimate goal is finding an agreement. So it's hard to say. It could annoy one person and it could not annoy the next person. That's part of understanding the person you're negotiating with. Because there are people that, we're fighting over $2,000 on $1 million contract. I'm done. I'm walking away.
Yeah.
And then there's a person that say, I don't care, whatever, have it, move on. So.
Everyone's welcome to unmute themselves and ask a question if you want. You don't have to type it in the group. So Daniel, I think Daniel's raising his hand. Let's see. Daniel,
yes. Yes, I had a question. Thank you for the presentation, Mark. So from your experience, what type of negotiation style would you say works best for a client like TxDOT?
A client like TxDOT. Oh, I got to pull up the list here. I mean, it's still to collaborate. It really is. Because it is the integrative negotiations. If you're doing it well with TxDOT and really any other client, and so that's why I like the contracts as a thought. So this is something that happens with them. So if we win an IDIQ contract, so indefinite deliverable, indefinite quantity contract, so we've won $5 million of work, say, but we haven't won a single project because that comes later. So the first thing we do is negotiate rates. And it is that back and forth that I was mentioning, sometimes they'll give us a proposal and we'll look at it and we'll go, man, we pay our EITs more than this. How can we do this? But we're making money on the PMs, or hey, they're giving us a really bad rate on our environmental scientists, but we expect that they'll have about 40 hours of work. So we can take the loss there to make them happy. So TxDOT, when it comes down, I think that's where, Samantha's asking about that last couple thousand. Sometimes that's what happens on these things is you've negotiated 95% of those rates, and there's that one that you're just looking at it and you're like, I can't take this rate. And you just have to, work with them and find a solution. I know it sounds like I'm copying out, but you have to do what's in the best interest of the company, and you have to be willing to walk away if necessary. But TxDOT's actually pretty fair. I think I don't have the private side negotiation experience. I've only done the TxDOT side, but I think TxDOT's actually pretty fair. They recognize that we're partners with them, and they want to continue with working with us, and they recognize the value we bring. So.
Awesome.
Gotcha.
So Kyler, I think Kyler's raising his hand. Kyler, you can ask your question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, how would you practice negotiations for like professional situations? Because with personal stuff, it's easy and there's relatively low stakes, but with professional ones, there's high stakes, and you can't really learn while you're negotiating it in the real situation.
But is there someone you could role play with?
Well, sure, I suppose, but then they may not have the background or experience to really accurately play that role, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, but still, it just understanding how you're going to deal with the situation that comes up. If you think about, maybe you can't negotiate with your supervisor. I mean, you ultimately want to negotiate with your supervisor. There might be another supervisor in the company that you would feel comfortable talking to, or someone a little more advanced in your career that would better understand them. So maybe as a younger engineer, you know, finding a PE that's been through this before and that might help you. And you know, you don't need to be scared of negotiating with a supervisor generally. I mean, unless you have a terrible boss. But I think my experience is that most supervisors are actually pretty open, and the things that they don't know what you're frustrated with. I can tell you from supervising people. You might think that I know all your frustrations, but if you don't tell me them, I don't know them.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good question. Yeah. So we have a couple questions in the chat as well. We have a question from Memo saying, can you negotiate if the employer itself started out giving you more than you requested? For example, if you were asking for a minimum of 62,000 and they offered you 65, should you then ask for more?
Could you? Yes. I think that's what I was trying to get with the bias. You know, so if you're tied to, I want to make, my 62 is the minimum I want to make, and if they offer you 65, if you're biasing yourself to, well, it's more than 65, I'm done. That's the issue. And look, I mean, the ultimate goal is to walk away happy. So if you're happy, you can take it, but that doesn't mean you can't negotiate. Just because they offered you more than you wanted doesn't mean they couldn't offer you more.
Yeah, right. We have another question from Dalton saying, what would you do in the scenario where you've been presented an offer letter? Would you reject it and ask them to revise the offer, or is it too late at this point?
No, it's never too late. I mean, each company is different. Some companies will have a verbal communication with you that we're going to offer you 60, and you can say that's not enough for me. If it's gotten to an offer letter, doesn't mean it's too late. And again, I think part of it is that's the whole BATNA situation. So, you know, if you already have a job and the new offer is not good enough, you have a backup plan that you continue working and look for the better job. But no, just because it's on paper doesn't mean you can't negotiate anymore.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people have questions about what is your value to the company? How much should you be, or when it comes to salaries,
yeah.
How much should you be making in this role? And so we have the ASCE salary survey where people have taken the survey, put in their information, how much experience they have, and how much they're making. And so it gives us a good idea of how much maybe we should be making, considering the area, the experience, and all that.
Yeah, and I think with salaries, you know, if you're already in a role and maybe the raise you got wasn't what you hoped, or your friends are making more than you, I think the important thing on the salary negotiations is talking about the value you're bringing to the company, not just, hey, my buddy makes 65 and I make 60. It's, hey, that last project, I really killed it for you, and I'm taking on more responsibility than I did when I first started this company. You need to tell them why you're worth the money, not just saying I want it because, you know, 2 of your people make this much. So
yeah. So we have a follow-up from Memo saying he asked earlier about if they offered you more, should you or could you ask for more?
Sure.
He said, follow-up, what's a good way to approach the negotiation if they've offered more than your minimum requirement?
It's, you know, so you wanted 62, they came in at 65. It's just as simple as saying, hey, this is a really great offer, but are you willing to go a little higher? You know, is 68, or can you do 68? Or it's up to you. I mean, that's part of the style again, because you could just, I wouldn't recommend it, but you could say this is not acceptable, I need more. But, and again, I think it's always a good idea to ask for more. And if maybe it's the salaries, what you wanted for, but maybe the PTO is not great or the benefits aren't great. So I think you need to look at the total package when you're talking about job offers. I think that's an important piece, is to understand it's more than a salary. Maybe the opportunity, maybe they're, you know, anyways, there's a lot to look at.
Yeah, and I know talking to people in that field, you know, if you're moving into a job that you're not quite sure what all it requires of you, you know, you can network with other people in ASCE. You join our younger members groups and just get a gauge of what all they require from their job. You know, like if you travel for your job, a lot of times they'll pay for your phone bill or your your gas, your mileage, things like that that you might want to know. So it's always good to talk to people that might be in similar positions as the new role that you might be going into. I see Dalton is typing, so wait for him to ask or say something. Earlier, did he go away? Oh yeah, Chris said, I feel like it's a good idea to have a ballpark amount going into the negotiation. There are good transparent resources online that you can get that can give you an idea of what the position you want makes. Oh yeah, which is what we're going to go into next is ASCE's resource on salary.
I can tell you, be careful with those online, like Glassdoor and all that. They're not the most accurate. I think it can give you a ballpark, but I can tell you, having looked up what I think I should be making and what Glassdoor makes, it can just be wildly inaccurate. So.
That's a great point, Mark. You know, using online forums to trying to figure out what salary you should go for into a negotiation is kind of a hard thing to figure out because that's your baseline of negotiation. Sam actually kind of created a nice little segue there. I've been joined the group here to kind of give a quick demo on how the ASCE engineering salary calculator works. What's great about ASCE is if you voluntarily join and you participate as a member of the salary, what they do is they ask you questions such as, what is your experience level? Are you a PE, EIT? What is your salary? Where do you live? And by filling out these surveys all across the country, it creates this database of information on, what is your salary according to whatever experience dividends that you may have. So I'll go ahead and see if I can snag control here, if you don't mind.
Nick, real quick, we had one more question from Dalton.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He said, a coworker left the firm and I have taken over the responsibilities. How do I identify a good time to ask for a raise? What are some tips for approaching my boss? This is a question from another viewer.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Timing's tough. There's a couple things to look at there. If there's an annual cycle and you're aware of it, getting on top of that would be probably the easiest thing to do. Or as far as timing goes, so if raises come out in December, say, at least a larger company like Jacobs, that means the process started in September, October, doing those numbers. So if you approached your supervisor in November and said, hey, I've taken all this extra work, I'd like a raise, their hands are tied. They're already in for the year. So that's something to think about, is the timing. And it'll depend by company, but if you know your annual review is coming up, or if you know when salary updates are coming out, that would be the best time. But the fact is, any time is the best time. If you feel frustrated, you feel underpaid and undervalued at a company, I would hope that you would have a relationship with your supervisor where you feel comfortable going to them. And if you don't feel comfortable going to that supervisor, start small. Don't jump in with, hey boss, can we meet? I want to talk about my salary. Let's meet and let's talk about what adventure roles I'm taking on. Just because you're taking on additional work from someone, and I can tell you this, your supervisor does their best, but they don't always know everything you're doing every day. So I had an employee who, when they would finish a project, they would send an email out and saying all the stuff they did, and get the PM to agree to that hey, this is what they did, and then I had a good idea of what they were doing. But you can't just go ask for more money. I think it's part of a relationship with that supervisor where you can get to the comfort of, hey, I've picked up extra work. I feel like in the role I'm in, the responsibilities I have, I feel underpaid.
Mm-hmm.
Also, probably. Go ahead, Sam. Sorry.
Okay. If you were going to add on, I was going to ask something else. So.
Oh yeah, I was going to add on to that. As Mark, do you think depending on obviously where your company is and where your team is with the fiscal year, would it be strategic in your mind to take advantage of maybe a moment where you've accomplished that extra task, or you've kind of crushed a project? Whenever you're standing in the spotlight, so to speak, those are probably a good moments to, if not bring it up directly, but mention it and say, hey, I've taken on these responsibilities. You've seen that I can do it, but I'd appreciate some kind of compensation. Would that be a good idea in your opinion?
Always toot your own horn is what I'll say.
Yeah.
Because it's tough. I mean, so even having done the annual reviews. So the problem you have as a supervisor is you're going to remember the most recent stuff. So if I'm doing a review and I'm writing it in October, I'm probably not going to remember the great stuff you did in January. So it's, maybe supervisors are about to do their reviews. You're getting in front of it and saying, hey, just FYI, I know you're working on my review. Just as a reminder, we did that project in January. I killed it. I took on responsibility. Again, I think if you have that great relationship with your manager, and hopefully you do, then it makes these things easier.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Awesome, thank you.
Going back to negotiation, I think a lot of people's fear is that if they have a good deal on the table and they're happy, but it doesn't hurt to ask, so they ask for more, that their job will be at risk, or the offer will be rescinded. Is that likely? Is that something that often happens? Not really. Is that something people should be worried about?
I mean, unless you're unreasonable, I can't imagine I can't imagine rescinding an offer for a reasonable counter. If you offered 65 and they said, hey, 68 is really what I'd like, I can't imagine saying, well, we don't want you anymore. If you've gotten to the point where you've made an offer to a candidate, I mean, there's a lot of time and investment that goes into that, from recruiting to interviews. I mean, just flipping through resumes. If you've gotten to that point, the company's invested in you already, even if you're not hired. So I think if I countered a reasonable counter and the company pulled an offer, it's probably a company I didn't want to work for, honestly. But yeah, I mean, if you were offered 60 and you say, no, I need 100, then, the company might say, well, we're not interested. We're too far apart. So.
Yeah, good point. Also with that, at what point, let's say they offered you 62, you asked for 65, they say no. At what point do you continue to ask? I guess I know what I would do, but for everyone, I'm answering my own question, but yeah.
So I had something so I interviewed with a company, I got the offer, I wasn't pleased with it. So this was my experience. And I said I wasn't pleased with it, and I didn't give numbers. I just said it's less than what I hoped. And this was a company where they said, well, HR sets the rates. There's nothing I can do. So it is what it is. And so that's frustrating. But then I started looking at the other things. It's, there's benefits. So you're offering 3 weeks of PTO. Can you make that 4 weeks? Probably can't do much on the other parts of compensation generally, or, maybe assignment. But yeah, if they said no, you're probably at a dead end. And that's when you either accept it or you walk away.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's everyone's questions. If anyone has anything to add. Nope. Okay. Well, pass it on to Nick then.
All right.
Thank you, Mark.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. We appreciate you giving that presentation. Seriously,
sure.
Especially coming into the field, coming into engineering as a fresh grad, or even as a first couple of years, negotiating your salary can always be one of the most high tension situations, especially when you're typically dealing with a hiring manager, supervisor, someone that's probably further up on the food chain. So it's always a little nerve wracking. So with that, kind of going in, having a tactic about your negotiations, like I mentioned earlier, ASCE has this awesome survey that they have accumulated across its entire membership base. What is great about it is it's very easily accessible. So if you want me to take the screen here, I will show you guys. All right, here we go. So how it works is if you guys just go ahead and check out asce.org here on the main page under membership and communities. Right here will be your engineering salaries. You click on that bad boy, and they just every year they'll do a new report based on all the information that they gather each year. Thankfully, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing based on inflation, the rates do tend to be going up, as you can see right here. This little gimme. They usually do a nice article just to talk about trends in the market at different levels of your experience, whether you're an EIT, a PE, your multi-year project manager. There's a great resource right here, is this annual report. But what we're really focused here is the salary calculator right here. So this salary calculator takes all of their survey information that they've received through the past year, and they accumulate all of the salaries based on experience level. The one thing to be noticed here is that there are a finite number of times that you can run this survey. And so ASCE members do get 5 free uses of it, and you have to be a signed up, registered, and paid for member. And if you're a student use or if you're a student member, you get 2 additional uses. And then you can also participate in the survey and add your personal information into this ASCE database, which of course is very confidential. They do not share that your specific information with anyone else. It just goes into a database. And so that stuff is accumulated. So we go over here, we check
Hey, Nick,
out.
do you know when the survey usually comes out?
When it comes out each year, I actually don't exactly know. They typically announce it when they do come out with it. This one is pretty, I think this one's like 5 or 6 months old. I might be wrong there, but they usually announce it whenever they are preparing to release the new report. So you just kind of got to stay tuned with the ASCE website.
Do you get an email as a member?
I do believe that you do, that ASCE National as an organization, depending on what email rights you've given to the ASCE organization, they will email you and let you know when there's a new one that comes out. So be on the lookout. Otherwise, typically, like I said, either the national website will shout it out, or as a chapter, we will be sure to let everybody know, so that way you can have the most up-to-date salary information.
So Nick, the national website posted their article about it September 30th last year. So I would say sometime at the end of September.
Make sure you get this 10 extra.
Hey, it matters, man. Yeah, get those salary surveys as soon as you can. Yeah, so once you click on that, it pops you into this results form. It'll ask you to log in prior to this page. I'm already logged in, so skip that. But you'll just use your normal membership login that you use either for your chapter or for the ASCE like home membership login. And from here, you have a couple of different options on what you can look at. They'll have the salary report, which is what you'll see. What's it? Right here is this report bundle that does cost money, whether you are a member or non-member. And what that does, that is a full report that not only gives you the calculator, but it allows you to research that survey data, see what are the most important criterion for a higher income, what employers are looking for. And that just gives you a comprehensive idea of what's going on with the salary and how it's affected with your experience. So then moving forward, one of the bigger ones for our student members is it comes in and gives you entry level salaries based strictly on all of the different regions that you have. Dallas, we are a part of, let me double check this, the West South Central region. So that's going to be this one right here. And as you can see, we have a median salary of $65,850 or $850, and then the average salary of $63,592. Which whenever I entered the market in 2013, this has gone up by about $2,000 or $3,000. So I'll take that as a win. And that's kind of that aspect of it. And then if you come in here, I guess we'll go back first and show you, and you bring up the salary calculator, and what you'll see is a big blank checklist here of just all the information that it's going to ask you. First off being your engineer's license, whether you have it or do not, and that's just strictly for your PE, not necessarily your EIT license. So obviously myself, I do not. You'll have your education choices here. Mine's obviously a bachelor. Your base of your company size, that way it gives you an idea of either the company you were in or the company that you were trying to apply for. This is good, and why we need multiple runs. So if you're going for a smaller firm between 30 and 40 employees, you might expect like a smaller salary number, being a smaller company. Or if you go for a larger company, that may be the opposite case where you might get more. So that does factor into the salary calculation. So you'll want to do pretty accurate with that. Because I personally work for Jacob and Hefner Associates, a little mid-range company, work in private development. So I'm going to come down here, private industry other than defense. Then engineering grades. So there are different grades, 1 through 8, and all these grades are a reflection of different experience levels. So those experience levels being listed here, I just very easily Googled ASCE civil engineering experience grades, and it popped up with this whole chart, all sponsored by ASCE. And it kind of lays out all the information that dictates what makes up each grade, mainly being technical responsibilities, managerial responsibilities, the direction that you need as an employee, any kind of oversight you provide for your company, titles, experience, education, things like that. And so you kind of just need to read through here based on your personal experience, check out what is the most applicable to you. For me personally, I've only been out of school for about 2.5 years now. So I lie right here in grade 2, where I've learned to do a fair amount of design tasks myself. But I do need to still coordinate with my supervisors, obviously. And then I began to work on proposals and project deadlines. So it kind of puts myself right between 2 and 3. But for a conservative value, I like to use 2, just so that way I have a lower number, just that way it's a little more conservative. Obviously, you pick your region here, so that way they know where you're coming from. They have Dallas, since it's one of the bigger hubs within this region. For every person in their job specific role, they're going to have a couple different things to put in here. Assuming most people here are going to be in the EIT range, I'm going to assume most of you guys are going to be doing design. So that's what I do here. And then here reflects my personal experience being less than 3. And then do you personally supervise technical employees? And that's being a CAD technician, surveyors, any of those type people. If you are coordinating with those and you are supervising them directly, that would be a yes here. Otherwise, it's a no. And I would say non-technical employees, if you have, intern in the office and you're that person that runs the intern, or you're able to look over those people's shoulders and be a little more corrective on that, that is a non-technical employee, I would say. And so you can go ahead and put a yes here. And then so once you've agreed with everything here and you like what all is reflected in your information, you'll come down and hit build report. What happens when you hit build report, it will then take all of your information and then compile it into a calculated salary range, being what your average would be versus the high and low. And then that will give you a full range of where you can expect your salary range to be based on your experience, your company that you're looking for, and your region. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and do it, build my report. There we go. And you'll see I'll have a little percentile here on what it shows for all the salary incomes. The median salary being about 57 as a base, coming down to 63. And when it talks about total compensation, what that includes is your insurance, any kind of compensation plans, 401ks, things of that nature. So of course, whenever you're considering your salary, these are all incredibly important things to consider. And then so, yeah, it'll list this out. And then with that information, you can walk into really any negotiation with a baseline of salary and try to ask for what you think you deserve. And with that, guys, I think it's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. And I would highly, highly recommend looking at this before you go into a negotiation of maybe a yearly salary bump or a new job. I use this personally before both of my job interviews since college. So I would say it's very, very useful. And I guess that's it I have for that, guys. If there's any questions, please go ahead and shoot them at me.
Does anyone have any questions? Remember, to access this, you have to be an ASCE member, so get your membership, guys. And if you're a recent graduate, they have a program where I think if you're 2 years out or 1 year out of school, the membership is like $10 or something, a lot less. So you can look into that. But yeah. A quick announcement: we have our younger member social this week on Thursday.
Hey, let's go.
Check the Wire newsletter, our social media accounts, our webpage to join the social. It's going to be a rhyme night. It should be lots of fun. So hope to see everyone there. With that, does anyone have any other questions? I don't see any. Okay. Well, thank you, Mark.
Thanks,
thank you,
guys.
everyone. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Everyone have a wonderful
Stop
week.
the recording.
Picture.
Oh, do you want a picture?
Wait, guys. Mark, do you want to turn your camera back on?
Sure.
There you go.
We don't have that many. Okay, I'm gonna just take a picture. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm
It's
good.
my hair. Okay. Got it. I never know how to take picture. Print
Okay.
screen.
You're just doing a screenshot?
Yeah, I just did a screenshot.
Should
Perfect.
print screen work? Never works.
Yeah, it'll work.
Okay.
Another quickie in the new Windows 10. If you hit the Windows key, the Shift button, and the
Yeah.
S key, it'll pop up a new screen grab where you can just draw a box and take your screen capture that way.
Control Shift S. There you go.
There you go.
Nice.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Hopefully, we'll see you all later this week at the YM get together. Everyone have a great week. Happy Monday.
Bye, everyone.
you.
Thank you. Bye.